Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here, here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod.
The book of Boba Fett just dropped their trailer on the internet, and the internet's going nuts over this thing. So we got all the chat today for you guys. I'm your host, Josh, and we have Blake, our co-host, joining us today in the Escape Pod to chat all about that, as well as a look back at the last 10 years of Disney Star Wars and a possible what-if scenario as to say what would happen if that never happened. Where were you when it did happen? Let's get into all that stuff. Lots of Star Wars news, Bring Home the Bounty Week 3, and so much more. Let's do it.
Another happy landing.
All right, let's dive right into Bring Home the Bounty Week 3.
The first thing I got to say about it is I'm already feeling deja vu going to this website, and we're only 3 weeks in.
I know. It's like, it's weird going to the same website page like countless times to check up on it. You know, I feel like I'm back in like, you know, it's like 2006 again, and I'm, you know, going to Lego.com for some sort of Star Wars Lego advent calendar or something like that. Every day you unlock a new PC wallpaper.
Yeah. You have computer class once a week, and you use that to go look at the Star Wars website.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. What do we got here? We got Sideshow Bo-Katan 6 scale. There's a Boba Fett talking action figure, Stormtrooper talking action figure. They're both 14 inches. The Razor Crest coming in Lego form. Wait a minute. I thought the Razor Crest was already Lego form.
It's the same one.
It's the same one. Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
cheap for them to do. Just
They
filling
did
in a
this last-
slot on the page.
They did it last week, too. The one before it, the Lego Trouble on Tatooine, is also from last year.
Right, yeah. What the heck? Come on, StarWars.com? Cheaping out on us here.
I bet most of it's been. Last week I noticed this as well. There's a bunch of stuff that has been on sale for a year or so. They're just using it as an advertisement, I think.
Well, I do see a few new things. At least there's 3 3/4 inch vintage collection Death Watch Mandalorian action figure. So there's that. There's also the Mandalorian Star Wars Monopoly game. I don't know how new that is, or if you guys have seen that in the stores, but it's new to me. Pretty neat. You can pass go and collect 20 credits. And the most expensive part of the board is the bridge, whatever that is.
Like a ship?
And there's a docking bay. Yeah, like, you know, what's the most expensive property in Monopoly? Boardwalk? So
Oh,
that's
gosh.
the bridge. It looks like they're all locations from the show. There's the Cantina, the Ice Cave, Crate Dragon Cave. I don't know.
I don't think an ice cave makes a lot of money.
No, yeah, you know. Okay, there was one Monopoly I played with a friend of mine, and it was, I believe it was it was some sort of Revenge of the Sith era boxed set. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but you bought planets. And there was some sort of implementation of like the war going on between Separatists and Republic, and it was pretty neat. Like they had some cool things about it. This just looks kind of like an original Monopoly game with credits instead of money, but
That's pretty neat. The one that you're talking about there.
yeah, it was really cool. Like they kind of made it their own game a little bit.
Yeah, so they actually had like maybe like the Separatists, instead of buying planets, you're like invading planets.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
occupying
exactly.
them?
Yeah. It was something very different, is what I remember. I played it a long time ago, but
That's pretty cool.
yeah.
Yeah, the only non-standard Monopoly I ever played was the Millennial one, where everything was too expensive for millennials to buy, so they just had to like couch surf and like work at coffee shops.
Oh yeah, that's
And
right.
so you had to like
remember you bought
take
that because
selfies.
they were. Wasn't there some sort of thing that happening where that was like getting outlawed or something like that? Like there was a big outcry to take it off the shelves.
What happened was a typical online bunch of people got mad and complained, tried to cancel it, and then it like went off the shelves for a while.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like people trying to resell it on Amazon and stuff, and it was just
Of course.
really expensive.
It's funny that you mentioned bringing that up now because I haven't seen that, of course, for ages now. So maybe it's a good thing that you bought a copy because these monopolies, they're kind of like there's people that collect these Monopoly games. Like they make so many of them, and they're published once and they're never published again.
Oh, the themed ones.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, I tried playing it, and honestly, it wasn't very good. I really liked the premise, but the gameplay wasn't very enjoyable.
I've played Monopoly Cheat Edition. That's pretty interesting. It's like the goal of the game is like you have a bunch of cards with different cheats on it, and you get rewarded these point cards if you perform one of the cheats that you end up drawing before the game begins. And if you get caught, there's like a little plastic handcuff that you have to wear to chain yourself to the board.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So you like steal extra money from the bank when you're drawing and stuff.
Yeah, there's stuff like that. That's my favorite one, of course. It's not a card that always necessarily gets drawn, but that's what lets the chaos ensue, right? Because it's like Monopoly Cheat Edition, and everyone feels like they got the right to reach over and steal one of your houses or something like that. So
just swap it out.
Yeah, exactly. Just flick it over to the next door property, onto yours. We got a 3 3/4 inch Ahsoka Tano from Corvus, Mandalorian style costume coming to the vintage collection. And what is this? A 6-inch series version of the Client from Mandalorian season 1. So that's pretty neat. Now those 6 inches are pretty good. Werner Herzog gets his own action figure. Never thought he saw that coming.
Some of these toys I put in quotations, are kind of obscure. I'm looking at a gift box of themed soaps.
Oh yeah, that's just one. That's just one category, isn't it? Yeah, there's a bunch of apparel coming.
The names are pretty clever though. So it's got Obi-Wan,
the Dr. Squatch.
Yes, the one Dr. Squatch soap Star Wars collection.
Yeah.
I'm going to read the individual bars because they have different names.
Please do.
So we got Obi-Wan, and his is Only Hope soap. So it's like you got such bad stank. This soap is your only hope. Then the next one's green. It's got Yoda, and it says Wisdom Wash. The third one's Darth Vader, and it's Dark Side Scrub.
Dark Side Scrub.
That's right. You're nothing but a Dark Side Scrub, Kylo. You should put a Kylo on there, but even more accurate.
Yeah.
And then the final one here is Darth Maul, and it's Ruthless Rinse.
A ruthless rinse. I need to rinse all the revenge off my skin.
You're actually really good at that.
Sam Witwer would be proud.
I think so. Sam, if you're listening, be careful. Josh is gunning for your job.
Yeah, exactly. I'm runner-up. I'm runner-up, Sam. Yeah, take your job when you're long gone. I'll be the next ruthless rinse Sith.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's like a place like this, maybe they don't have the budget to hire Sam Witwer. They're going to hire me for their $45 finest soap in the Galaxy box set. Open this limited edition collector's box. You know what's sad about this? Is that most people buying this box of soap is never going to use it. It's limited edition. They're going to keep it in the box.
That's true. No one's ever going to know the actual smells.
No, it's like, I mean, who would want to spend $45 on 4 things of soap for the wrapper and the box itself? I mean, the actual Star Wars ishness about it is on the box itself, like, right? Like I don't know, from this picture I can't actually see like what the soap looks like.
No, I just see the boxes.
But to me it looks like maybe they've got some sort of like sculpted in imprint on it for a face of the character or the logo or of their faction or whatever. But
It definitely has a pattern. You can especially see on the Obi-Wan, the red and the blue there. It's got kind of a tie-dye kind of look to it.
Yeah. It does have something under there, so maybe there is like a print of their face on it or something. But that's going to scrub away really quickly.
Yeah.
So
I love how the Obi-Wan, they picked the episode 2 Obi-Wan where he's got like all the flow.
Yeah, the flowy hair. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally. It's like the super. It looks like the guy from the commercial.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like clearly they picked this one.
Yeah. To go along with their grooming products. Yeah.
I could see Obi-Wan using it.
Of synthetic detergents filled with harsh chemicals, Dr. Squatch brings a new hope to your soap. Made with the finest ingredients, our Star Wars soap collection is sure to bring balance to your shower destiny. Man.
Oh, wait, hold on. There's lightsabers underneath. What is this?
Oh, I found the pictures of the soap. It is just like a tie-dye look. There's no picture. There's no imprints. It's just a bar of soap.
So somebody dared open the box?
It's on the website page, actually. I'm just looking. I just scrolled down the page and it just, I clicked on the link, scrolled down the page, and there it is. It's just for Yoda, it's just a bar of green soap. So, if you're into $45 soaps, this is the soap for you.
Or if you have just a particularly bad BO, this soap may be your only hope.
Yeah, exactly.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
You're my only soap.
There we go. That better be their advertisement.
Man, we should be on their marketing committee.
Oh my gosh. You should get product placement on here and sell soap, and you can say that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's move on here. We got Boba Fett coming to Galaxy of Heroes in the mobile app, and there's a plushie Chewbacca cuddles, some apparel, sweaters, robes, all this stuff. Cool. Lots of merch coming. So bring home the bounty. Look it up. # bring home the bounty. Awesome. What else we got? We got some big news this week. I mean, we're coming up on less than 60 days now for Boba Fett.
The
book of Boba Fett. And what's crazy about this show is it's basically supposed to be Mando 2.5, season to bridge the gap maybe between season 2 and 3. At least that's kind of what they're hyping it up to be. And
it's like the Civil War. Captain America Civil War of the Avengers movies.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the explainer between stories. And the last we saw Boba, he was shooting off into space after helping out Din Djarin get aboard the Imperial cruiser to rescue the child. And then that finale with Luke Skywalker kind of blew us all away, and that cameo was just like, whoa, forgot all about Boba Fett. Like, what happened to him? So then the post-credit scene was great, because then it's like, oh yeah, that's right. I forgot Boba was in this. And we go to Tatooine, and him and Fennec Shand are walking into Jabba's place, just shoot up Bib Fortuna in a post-credit scene of all things.
Yeah.
And says, boom, they're dropping us a title of the next show. And it's like only weeks before that, they had the Disney conference that they were talking about all their future shows. They left that one out just so it'd be a surprise for the end of season 2 of Mando. So what's crazy about this week is that the trailer has finally dropped, because we haven't had a trailer until this very moment. So
it's actually really late, isn't it? Like a month out.
Oh yeah, like not even 2 months away. So here it is. Let's get to this.
I am not a bounty hunter. I've heard otherwise. I know that you sit on the throne of your former employer. Jabba ruled with fear. I intend to rule with respect.
chieftains under Jabba the Hutt.
I'm here to make a proposal that's mutually beneficial. Why speak of conflict when cooperation can make us all rich?
What prevents us all from killing you and taking what we want?
If you had spoken such insolence to Jabba, he'd have fed you to his menagerie.
Please, speak freely.
I'm a huge fan of underworld stories. I find them a refresh, especially compared to just seeing the same Jedi taking on great evil story we tend to get a lot. And so getting into like the nitty gritty, I've always enjoyed that. And Dave has done such a good job portraying Boba Fett through the Clone Wars series that I'm really curious to see how he wants to kind of take it after Return of the Jedi. And him becoming a crime lord is not what I would have seen coming. My only concern is it might be too similar to what happened to Darth Maul. I don't want us to retread that same path. So obviously in the trailer he said that he's planning to rule through respect as opposed to Jabba who ruled through fear. So it's interesting how that'll work in like the part of Star Wars dealing with the people who betray each other so easily.
You're right. That's actually a great point. I never really thought to make that comparison, but yeah, I guess Darth Maul did have a very similar storyline. He kind of fell from his previous position, I guess, as a Sith apprentice, and then became a crime lord. And Boba Fett, even in this trailer, he's like, I'm not a bounty hunter, but he clearly was at one point, and now he's not really classifying himself as he's not classifying himself as what he was in his occupation before. So it makes me wonder, like, what they're going to do as far as evolving this character, because the nice thing about storytelling is that characters change, right? Like characters evolve and they become someone different or someone better or someone worse or whatever. And as we know, Boba Fett not exactly to be a villain, but more of an anti-hero is what we've kind of been led to believe by watching the Clone Wars. And the prequels really make him out to be this kid who's lost his father, who's kind of also lost his way in the way that the world works, and he's been sucked into this career as a bounty hunter, but he also is the kind of guy that is honorable at what he does, and so he does do the right thing. And in some of the unreleased Clone Wars episodes, he does in fact have a few more noble moments. And even in the Dark Disciple novel, like the episodes we're talking about those with the Quinlan Voss What Happened episode, he does show up in that book as well. And him and a bunch of his bounty hunter compatriots, they end up helping Ventress distract Dooku while she rushes into Dooku's lair to try and get Quinlan Voss when he's kind of under Dooku's thumb as a prisoner. So he is, and despite being paid or whatever, he also, it's like no one in the right mind would be paid to go try and kill Dooku, right? Like, so I mean, there is something. And then there was that one Clone Wars episode with the train, and he actually does. He
It's
actually
the one
does,
where he fights the ninjas.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and he's an honorable character in that story, and whereas before the Clone Wars and before these prequels and everything, Boba was quite the villain. Like, we just knew him as the guy who captured Han Solo and then got killed by the Sarlacc because he got knocked in, right? Like that was all we knew about him, and he was kind of cool and mysterious, and now there's so much more to this character, and now we got a full show about him, which is pretty sweet. A lot of us you and I both were looking forward to 1313, which was a game about, or was going to be a game about Boba Fett that got canceled. And it makes me wonder, like, maybe are we going to see some flashbacks in the show, or are they going to pull elements from maybe what they would have done with that story or some of the canceled Clone Wars episodes or whatever.
It's a good
right?
question. I almost feel like either Cad Bane's going to show up and they'll have the duel, or there'll be a flashback to the duel with Cad Bane.
You're convinced it's going to happen?
I think so, because it's Dave's story, and he was leading up to that point in Clone Wars for a long time, and he was very excited about it.
It makes me wonder if, because we speculated about this in Bad Batch as well. So, are they going to save that for season 2 of Bad Batch? Because we know that Bad Batch is coming back next year, along with, next year for Star Wars is packed. Like there's, we got Andor, Kenobi, Bad Batch season 2, Mandalorian season 3, and I think Ahsoka as well is all going to be next year. Is that right?
It's a good question. I don't actually know the release dates.
I'm pretty sure. I don't know
most
about
of it.
Maybe not the Ahsoka show. I don't know. I'm torn. I know Andor and Kenobi and Mando 3 for sure, and Bad Batch season 2. So we got at least 4 shows happening next year. Ahsoka is filming this December, so it's possible that it could be released early 2023, perhaps. But there's so much Star Wars stuff in the works, and that's an arc that you and I both really looked forward to that we never got. But it would be cool to see that moment for sure.
Makes you wonder on that topic, though. It's funny, they said that one Star Wars movie a year was too much, and now they're releasing like 5 seasons.
That's because what they were giving us was too much, and now we can't get enough of what they're giving us. I mean, that's true. That's just the general kind of attitude, and it's the general consensus. That's not even just a personal opinion. Like the general consensus of these shows has been so positive that there's people out there for Halloween dressed as Grogu or Mandalorian or whatever that aren't even Star Wars fans. And
in
like
fact,
now,
didn't you go as Grogu trick-or-treating yesterday?
That's right, I did. Had to tape on those green ears and everything. No,
I can't believe you got your mom to pull you around that little wagon. So it looked like you're in a floating chair.
It was a big wagon.
I feel like this needs to be done now. This is like next year's Halloween costume.
100%. But yeah, it's become a part of common. In a way, Star Wars has always been part of pop culture, but in another level, The Mandalorian has almost superseded its Star Wars title and become its own thing, like its own kind of level of recognition, which is kind of the strangest thing to be a Star Wars fan these days, because all of a sudden now, Star Wars, it's not like Star Wars wasn't cool before, but now to other people, you don't look like such a dork, like walking around with a little green elf on your shirt, right? Like most people would be like, what is that? Like, bro, like you walk into a bar, you're like, yeah, look, there's a Star Wars fan, right? But now I'm like, I'm not the weird one in the room. Now I'm like one of 3 people wearing the same shirt, kind of thing. So it's interesting times. It's interesting times.
I'm curious, do you say that just because there's so many non-hardcore Star Wars people that are really into it?
Yeah, I think so. Like I'm getting the vibe that like people who never were Star Wars fans before now kind of have a greater appreciation for it, and that's mostly due to The Mandalorian. Not so much the new films, but specifically The Mandalorian. Like that show, with the launch of Disney Plus, has brought in a whole nother wave of fans in a way that these movies tend to do when they come out. Like they're always targeted at bringing new, younger audiences into the realm of the Star Wars franchise. But this Mandalorian show has brought in a very different group of viewership, and there's people that I've known from work or even old classmates or whatever. We have a mutual one in mind that I'm thinking of, and I'm thinking of him going like, this guy was never a Star Wars fan, but he watched The Mandalorian and he liked it, and he's kind of a Mandalorian fan now, right? And and so it's one of those things that's just like it resonates with people, and with the Book of Boba Fett coming out, there's a legacy of this character that kind of supersedes the appearance in the films, and it goes beyond the comics and the books and all that stuff. This is like an iconic thing now. The Mandalorian T visor has now been permanently kind of stamped into
Pop culture.
pop culture. Yeah, absolutely.
The point that raises is Mandalorian was so successful. It's gonna be really hard for Book of Boba Fett to find as high of a rating in the audiences.
Yeah, it's I guess being a follow-up show to Mandalorian. I mean, here's the thing though, like Boba Fett has got its own fandom for years. I mean, and to say those have been Star Wars fans. Din Djarin was such a new character; it brought in a whole new, section of fandom. At least, this is just what I was talking about. But Boba Fett that already has an existing fandom. A lot of Boba Fett fans looking forward to this show, and a lot of Star Wars fans as well. Of course, we're all looking forward to the show. But
Probably Bosk fans as well. I think we saw a glimpse of
Bosk
him in
fans.
there.
Yeah, we saw some Trandoshans in the trailer, and some
Hopefully it's Bosk.
Aqualish people, and some.
Because as far as we know, Bosk is still alive, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, I don't think he died in any of the comics. Unless he's, yeah, no, he should be around. Unless
So in theory, in this movie, we could get a reunion with all of the bounty hunters we see on Vader's ship.
Yeah, technically, it's theoretically possible. I mean, recently, it's funny that you mentioned that because recently in the War of the Bounty Hunters comic crossover, that's kind of exactly what happened, right? Because we never really see the follow-up of all these bounty hunters that are after Han Solo. And the War of the Bounty Hunters crossover that just happened in the Marvel comics actually tell the story of this follow-up that happens to Empire Strikes Back, and the consequences and the result of throwing all these bounty hunters out in the galaxy to catch the same guy. That's also how they rope Kira back into the story from Solo. It's how they're going to explain a lot of stuff. But yeah, Forloom and IG-88 and Bosk and all those bounty hunters, they're all coming. They all came back in that comic book series. So yeah, maybe we'll see some of them pop up in this show. It's going to be really cool.
I almost feel like it has to happen now, because why would they make this comic book series as a lead in to the Book of Boba Fett, like Disney Plus series, without the express purpose of getting those characters fresh in people's minds again of who they are?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think being a casual fan, I mean, of and for any casual fan of Mandalorian who might not be the most hardcore Star Wars fan, they'll look at Boba Fett and go, "Oh, I know him from the Mandalorian," and "Oh, I know him from The Empire Strikes Back," right? So it's those people that are going to look at this show and go, "Oh, that looks great. I'm going to watch that," and then knowing that these shows have just been so good so far, I'm expecting this show to kind of knock our socks off, and then they'll be like, "Oh yeah, Boba Fett, I forgot how cool that guy was," and and that's going to be another little portal into the Star Wars fandom that they're going to be finding themselves sucked into. So
True.
yeah,
And let me lead into this by saying I think you're right. I think it's going to be great, but it is possible, because this is the first series we're getting where Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni were writing multiple shows at once.
Yeah.
So this is kind of our first taste to see if they handled that well or not.
That's true. Yeah, it's a great, I mean, we put so much faith in John and Dave to make these good stories and produce these shows on this multi-pipeline kind of construct that they've got going on. But yeah, it's a fair thing to bring up, because I mean, they're busy guys, and sometimes the quality control can get overlooked a little bit by them if they're juggling like 5 different shows at the same time. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we're all going to need to keep in mind as we go in and forgive the little things. And I know there's already been people pointing out online that there's some elements of Boba's armor that have been slightly inconsistent with The Empire Strikes Back or whatever, or Return of the Jedi or whatever. And it's things like that I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to let that worry me, but we'll see what happens. I'm very curious as to whether or not they'll continue to do this whole Slave One nonsense,
That's a good
with the
question.
name of Boba's ship, like that, that's something that I'm more concerned about, is whether or not they'll keep referring to it in what they lately have been doing with the toys and the Lego sets. So they've just been calling it Boba Fett's starship, as
I guess
opposed to Slave One.
that one will probably come down to the fact if Dave Filoni, Favreau think that's a battle worth fighting for, because I bet Disney will say no, and then they'll have to fight for it. I bet that's what it comes down to. And so I wouldn't be surprised if in this show we got a new like name christening.
Slav One.
Slav E1.
Slav E1, yeah. All right.
So he's from Slovakia.
Well, and as I mentioned, Ahsoka is going to be filming in December. There was an article that I saved about The Mandalorian Season 3 from inverse.com. This was posted on the 21st of October at 5:28 a.m. Somebody's up late. And it's I don't know, take this with a grain of salt, but I thought it was kind of interesting. I thought it was a bit fascinating because this is something that we've all kind of speculated about. There's supposedly a scene that happens in Mando Season 3. So maybe tune out for the next couple minutes if you don't want to be possibly spoiled, because, this may or may not be legit. But there's a sequence that's been described to have featured roughly 75 Mandalorians all assembled together, which is far more than we've ever seen in a Disney Plus series. And as we know from Season 1, Din Djarin briefly hangs out with a handful of Mandalorians in underground covert in Navarro. And in Season 2, he encounters Bo-Katan and her owls. But 75, we've never seen that many. So this article says, it's kind of worded a little strange, but it says, the fact that 75 Mandalorians even exist at this point in Star Wars history is a bit of a shock. The Mandalorian Season 2 reveals that the Empire pretty much wiped out the people and their planet, apparently turning Mandalore into glass. At the time the show is set, many people believe the entire planet is cursed. If 75 Mandalorians are going to assemble in one place, it could signal a new era for Din Djarin's adopted people. Then again, it could also draw attention of Moff Gideon and the remnants of the Empire, or even the Emperor himself. So I thought it was kind of worded a bit strange, because if the Empire did bombard Mandalore with their orbitable lasers and stuff and turned it to glass, because that's kind of what happens when they do that, it's not that hard to believe that 75 people would be off planet during that time.
No, that's my thoughts too. Like, considering it's an entire race, using race as a as a creed, but race of people.
Right. Yeah, and who knows, right? Like, maybe those people weren't warriors before they're off planet, and then they're like, you know what? Screw the Empire. Let's strap on some armor and kick some butt, right? So
it's true, and
yeah, it's not that hard to believe.
Let's say there was 10 that survived, and the battle that took place on Mandalore, I think, was early Empire too, right? Like, it wasn't even it was before Rebels.
Yeah, the event that turns Mandalore to glass, though, happens. I believe it happens. Is it before or after? I think it was around that time period for sure, because even though we didn't see it in Rebels, we did see Mandalore, and I feel like maybe it happened before that show.
That's what I thought, but maybe I'm mistaken. So, but theoretically, if it was before, and there was 10, I'm sure they could have all taught 3 people in 15 years.
Yeah. It doesn't seem that far-fetched. So, I don't know. I mean, I find the interesting. It's an intriguing idea that 75 Mandalorians could be in the same sequence together. Makes me think maybe they've been rounding up their own kind to take back what's theirs, kind of thing. Yeah.
It's a neat idea. It'd be cool to see a battle of all these Mandos together. But I feel like that would have been really expensive on the costume department, and they probably would have done it CG. So I'm not sure how legit this is. That's my opinion.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. So, I mean, looking forward to Mandalorian Season 3. Take that thing with a grain of salt. But, that'd be interesting to find out. So,
Though, before we change the topic, I will say this does sound like it's falling in line with Din Djarin becoming Mandalore.
it does, yeah. Actually, that's something that we have talked about in the past, including in our Mandalorian Nights episodes, where we just sat down after an episode and chatted about that. But it came up numerous amount of times, and it's funny that you mentioned that with Book of Boba around the corner, because I believe it was in Legends that he was the one that became Mandalore. But
Yeah.
obviously, that's kind of going a different route now that he's becoming the successor to Jabba the Hutt. So,
Different direction.
yeah, different direction for sure. Yeah, so maybe we'll have two Mandalorians now take leadership positions in different places. So yeah,
Yeah. The biggest question to me is what's going to happen between Din Djarin and Bo-Katan because of the Darksaber.
yeah,
Because that's what's going to be the biggest issue with him becoming Mandalore at this point.
Yeah, totally, definitely. So let's move on to the final thing we have on the news list. I just thought this was a little bit interesting. Pablo Hidalgo, he's got a private Twitter account, but he's also got a public Twitter account that he opened again recently for anyone to follow. And he posts some interesting stuff sometimes. And this was just a series of tweets I thought was very, very interesting to bring up around this this time. Pablo says, I heard about a few days beforehand, he's answering a tweet that says, where were you when you first heard the news? This is in regards to 2012 when George sells Lucasfilm to Disney. And Pablo says, I heard that about a few days beforehand, had to take a phone call about it at New York Comic Con 2012 and hope no one overheard. I first heard that there were being new movies on June 29th, 2012. Then I went to Celebration 6 in August with that in my head. Lol. Knew something was up earlier that spring because of the flurry of strange questions coming from chairman's office / legal in the spring beforehand. Knew the company was shifting back into production mode. Had no idea about the sale. I don't think anyone who started Product did. My boss that June to me, they're making 7, 8, 9. And me, bullshit. There's no 7, 8, 9. Well, there wasn't in January, but then there was over that spring. So yeah, though I don't know. It was just a funny series of tweets. I just didn't really think about that. I guess we all think of George selling the company as just George selling the company, but I guess it affected a lot of people in their own career, and hear Pablo's story of where he was when Lucasfilm was sold to Disney. So
it's pretty neat. I can honestly picture Pablo like hiding in a corner like Comic-Con. He's like looking around, make sure everybody's like listening to him, trying to talk on the phone, but he's also like speechless and like flustered.
Man, yeah, a little nervous Pablo. Yeah, I got you.
I could definitely see that.
Question of the week though is, where were you when you first heard the news? Where were you when you first heard the news?
I think I read it on an article in my friend's basement at their computer.
I was at school on the computer, and it was like shortly after lunch or something like that. And I came sitting down at my desk, and I think somebody was talking about it in the room, and I was like, wait a second, like I looked up Star Wars on Google. It was all over the place, just slapped everywhere. It was the biggest news of the day, and I just couldn't believe it, and I was so excited because and then thereafter until episode 7 came out, for the longest time I was like, this is the biggest opportunity ever. I mean, this is the moment where we can have like the cast of the prequels and the cast of the original trilogy in one set of movies. Like Forrest Ghost, Annie and Obi and Yoda and stuff, and like literally pick up where episode 6 left off with Luke looking at his Force Ghost council of heroes, and obviously that's something we never got, but it just made me really happy to know
a lot of people were expecting that, and I think that got them really excited about these sequels.
Yeah,
it's funny to hear you talk about it though in a way that so many people who were fans of the original trilogy talk about the prequels.
Yeah, that's the thing though. It's like with the original trilogy, it's like there were clues about what had happened before. I mean, even the Clone Wars, like the Clone Wars was talked about right away. I remember us doing an episode earlier this year where we read an article from, I forget the name of the magazine, but it's a vintage article from a magazine that was published in, I think it was like 1980 or something like that, or 1981. And Empire Strikes Back had like literally just hit the screen. And it was a guy's perspective who was writing for this magazine about what he thought the Clone Wars was and what kind of part it would play in the overarching story of Star Wars. Yeah, it was this mindset that people are like, oh, this is something we haven't yet come to conclusion about. And, what is that going to look like? And we got George's vision. So all this fan speculation as to like what the prequels were going to look like. And then of course we get what they actually do look like. But that's what it always looked like to George, right? Like, I mean, I know the guy changes his mind on some things, but I don't think it was all that so far from the tree, like it all kind of stayed pretty close there.
Yeah, because one thing about that is there wasn't a lot of novels that had came out as a prequel story to the original films. Everything was afterwards. So it made a pretty massive difference from creating these films that we kind of all had in our heads, but didn't actually exist in any physical story. Where then we got the sequels, there was all this stuff that everyone had already read, learned, comics, novels, whatever, right? And then they just like threw it all out and went with something else. So that it changed the expectations a lot.
Definitely, yeah. We were used to this 6-part saga of George's vision, right? And not to mention this multi-season animated show that had pointed us in a certain direction with where that vision was going to go, because we found out that episode 7 was going to bring back Darth Maul. In the Star Wars archives, episodes 1 through 3, there was a mention about the sequels in there. And it was like just on a very brief thing on the page, but I believe it was Darth Talon and Darth Maul that were going to be characters likely featured in George's movies for 7, 8, 9.
That sounds like a Dark Horse comic.
It does, yeah. And well, Darth Talon is from Dark Horse comic, but something along those lines as far as the character. But Darth Maul would have come back, and it makes total sense. Like with him bringing him back in the Clone Wars, it made sense to then bring him back as the villain later on in the movies. And they kind of did, like with Solo, like it kind of, obviously with him being alive still in Rebels, like, and then I know they killed him off in there, but like they had that room to bring it back in the movies, and so they did. But it makes me wonder. It's just like it makes you think, like, how different would these movies have been if George had actually done them, right? So
it's a good question. I'm still really curious to see what the original story drafts were.
Yeah.
I hope they get released at some point. Just some random, maybe it's like a novelization or a comic, like offshoot thing, like they did with the Wills. It's kind of the same idea. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, and I mean, we're coming up on 10 years now since Disney bought Lucasfilm. We're on year 9, and next year will be the 10-year anniversary.
Man, that's crazy.
It's crazy, right? And
we've had like 3 games.
Yeah. Well, I'm bringing it up because next year is 10 years, and I'm just going to play this little clip from George's interview on the Charlie Rose interview he did a little while back. So let's take a listen.
It's your family. It's the last story. It's your story.
But
it's
in the end,
you.
But I knew there's 3 more stories, and I knew that was going to probably take, to do it right would take about 10 years. And I said, I'm 70. I don't know whether I'll be here when I'm 80. Every 10 years the odds get less. And so I said, and I'm not ready to do that because I want to do these other things. So I have to make the decision on my own that it's time for me to move on.
That's a long time. Like the guy's in his 70s, 80s now, almost. Like in those 10 years, he would have reached the age of 80, I believe, or something, or late 70s. And, I totally forget how old he is now. But, the point is he was going to get very old, right? And, he said, in his own words, he said, I don't know if I'm going to be around that long. Like genuinely, like anything can happen when you're past the age of 60, right? Like it's very, and, he's not the healthiest guy in the world. So, you just never know. Right. And so, but it kind of stuck with me because I was thinking to myself, like, man, to do these movies right, 10 years, we're not even at that 10-year mark yet. Like next year is 10 years. That means that the actual like George Lucas episode 9 could have been coming out this December.
No, 9/7.
Or even next summer kind of thing. Cause he was a May release kind of guy. So it might have been, we might even be looking at George Lucas's episode 9 for May 2022, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah,
right?
that would be very crazy. What a different world.
Yeah, very different world. We wouldn't have the EA exclusive license of games. We wouldn't have Mandalorian. We wouldn't have Star Wars Rebels. We wouldn't have any of the sequels, Rogue One. And, amongst those things, I mean, of course, there's a lot of us out there that do love our bits and pieces out of the collective. But, I mean, if you were to mentally rewind the clock and kind of know what's going to happen with the franchise when you go one way, would you be willing to take the chance to flip the switch and change history forever and alter George's mind and convince him to do the movies? Right.
It's funny. I was going to ask you the exact same thing.
I would do it.
You would? You take the risk?
Yep. Yeah, I would take the plunge. I mean, I absolutely love George's Star Wars movies, and it's episode 3 is my absolute favorite, and I would love to see where that was going to go in as far as sequels. Right. Episode 3, I think, was kind of a pinnacle of his filmmaking career. Like that movie is to this day a masterpiece. Right. Everything from John Williams' soundtrack to like the visual on-screen story. I mean, you don't even need to watch that movie with lyrics and you can know what's happening because it's so visual. Like it's everything is visual, from the environments to the mood of the acting and everything. Right.
He's such a master. It's insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's a piece of modern contemporary art that's a masterpiece. And so like to have a guy like that go from a movie like that into a full sequel trilogy using the characters from the movies that the majority of people consider their favorite would have been crazy. It would have been amazing, right? And that's what I was looking forward to. So yeah, I would 100% flip that switch. Yeah. What about you?
It's harder now that we've had content that I really like.
Yeah.
Which is mostly the streamed stuff. Because if it was just the movies, I'd probably go the same way as you and risk it, because I really enjoyed Solo and I really liked Rogue One a lot. And the sequels did have pieces that I enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd feel like George would have made a more cohesive story to the rest of the movies. I would have preferred that. But for me, like, the thing that makes it difficult is I really like the slower pace of a series as opposed to a film. So I prefer.
Well, he still had live action series in the works though, remember? Like he still had Underworld in his back pocket. So
yeah, but if he's focusing full time on the movies, that's not going to come out.
Yeah, I mean, who knows, right? Like that's the thing, right? Like, there's so much that we can do to speculate on what would have happened, because he was training Dave to be a cinematic director, right?
And the other side of it too, right, is because Disney is this massive, like, corporate, like, entity, they can put out all these deals, get all these books and all this stuff and everything simultaneously.
Yeah.
While George, he has a lot tighter grip of creative control, and as we saw, the prequels, books and stuff came out, but it didn't really come out until after at least the first movie, which means this 10-year span would have been the second coming of, like, the dark times.
Yeah. Yeah, and it also makes you wonder, like, as these movies were coming out, more content based around the movies would fill in the gaps. But it makes you wonder, like, because there was so much gap filled in after episode 6, like what would have happened to all that content? Like, would it just have been over? Like, I mean, Disney came in and just took the sledgehammer and went boom, like we're decanonizing or just reaffirming that these are not canon so that you're not disappointed. But we're kind of drawing the line and being like, after this particular book comes out, everything else is going to be canon. So it's like George isn't the kind of guy that would do that. I don't think, like, he just didn't care. Like, he would be like, oh, I'm just going to make my movies, and whoever does books and comics, like, they're just going to have to change what they're doing. You know? So
yeah, it's a good point. And like, yeah, it makes it tricky. It really does.
Yeah, it makes it really tough to
you know what, I want to have my cake and eat it too. So I would have George make a deal with Disney to work with Dave Filoni as the head honcho to put together shows like Mandalorian, and then George works on the films.
Yeah,
because I could work, because Dave was George's apprentice, so I feel like they could actually do that.
Yeah. And you know, and it's also interesting to think, we know for sure what would have happened with the Clone Wars if George had kept the company. It would have finished. Like, we would have had all 8 seasons fully. So we know that for sure. Is that also worth it? Does that also like play a little bit into the equation for you? Because, you know, amongst the whole time that Disney's had the license, like, we've pestered them for Clone Wars to finish, and then finally they threw us a bone and gave us half a final season, which was kind of like, here's your finale, there you go, Dave, finish it up, kind of thing.
That's true.
I mean, he really didn't get a chance to tell the full story he wanted to, but instead Disney was like, yeah, you know what, let's do a different show, let's do Bad Batch, let's do, you know, and before that, let's do Star Wars Rebels and whatever. But Clone Wars has never been finished, and to this day there's still like more than 20 something odd episodes that have not been told. And I'm not even talking about the adapted ones into the novel and comic or whatever. I'm talking about, on paper, there's a script and some proxy animation scenes for some of them, and that's it. Like, nothing else. Like, some of them don't even have voiceover dialogue yet. So
no, that's a good point. I didn't really consider that, and that is very enticing. I would very much have liked to have seen that in its final product.
Yeah,
see everything together.
Because we got halfway through season 6, and then half of season 8, I guess. So
yeah, I was gonna say, because there you go.
Like,
that's
2
almost
full seasons.
More than that. It sounds like almost 3. It's 2.5.
Yeah, it's kind of, because well, you got the rest of season 6, and then, well, actually not, because I mean, we have the proxy animation, we've got Dark Disciple, we've got Son of Dathomir. So, you know, if you take away all that stuff, then it's kind of like half a season and a half. So basically all of season 7.
Watching it in proper Clone Wars, like quality animated series, I think would have been better.
For sure. So. Yeah, that's true. Actually, we wouldn't have any of the adapted material if those were actually produced episodes. So we would have had a lot more. And you know, that was when the show was just getting really good too. So I mean, I would have really loved to have seen that finish.
I still can't believe Disney did that. It was like the biggest thing Star Wars had going, and like had this massive fan base, and they just like pulled the plug
off. Yeah.
Oh man.
I know. It's still to this day hard for me to like digest the thought that actually happened. But and they announced that news when season 5 was nearly finished. Like season 6 was in production, but nothing. We hadn't seen season 6 yet. It was just half of season 5, or we had the finale coming out soon.
Mm-hmm.
And then this news came out, and then boom, Clone Wars canceled. And then it's like, yep, season 5, you're going to see the rest of season 5, and that's it. And then season 6 was like a Netflix thing that came out like a year or so later. They just dumped it on Netflix to be like, yeah, this is what's ready, and here's the whole show. And they left it up on Netflix for the longest time, and then they took it off eventually, and it became part of Disney Plus. But you can buy Blu-rays for seasons 1 through 6. You can buy. I've got all the Blu-rays. Latest season, of course, is exclusive to Disney, so they don't make a Blu-ray for that yet. But Yeah, I mean, it's there is a lot of Disney Star Wars that I do appreciate, like Rogue One, and Solo was great, and Mandalorian, of course, and Book of Boba around the corner, and now we have more to look forward to, I think, than ever. But it's just one of those questions that's always going to linger. It's like, what if, kind of thing.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Well, there's always that chance that George passes on the info to Dave, and then Dave takes a crack at trying to tell that story, right?
Yeah.
Because they could do the same thing that Marvel did with like the What If universe. They could kind of do the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Then at least we get it.
Totally. Releasing those adaptation or those stories in a comic book form or something would be, more than it would be the Star Wars news of the year. Like, I'd be drooling over those if they ever released George's stories in some form like that. But that's the thing. Like, there's a rough script for episode 7, and that's it. Like, there's no 8 or 9 scripts.
I'm sure he has some sort of writing.
There's an outline.
Yeah.
Like, there's an outline somewhere in his notebook, but there's no finalized script. Whereas we know for sure episode 7 did have a script, because it was then disapproved, and then they recast the screenwriter to some other to JJ and gave the job to him, but they didn't even have a director for episode 7. Like, it was just going through the creative process with George and I forget the guy's name who did Toy Story 3. He was a screenwriter for that one, and that was the script that they had some concept art in the Force Awakens art book. You can take a look at what they have there. It's like few and far between images, maybe 6, but yeah, it was pretty it's pretty interesting. Like, it's you take a look at some of those things and it's like, wow, I know they're just concepts, but I mean, to think that some of these were based on the original George vision for episode 7 is pretty cool.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And it just dawned on me now that another thing we wouldn't have got is the Star Wars park at Disneyland.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, Galaxy's Edge wouldn't exist. A Norwood Galactic Star Cruiser, the new expansion that just came out.
And I know that it's not the most popular park, but I have hope that it's going to get better in time.
Yeah, and it is cool to think that there is a place out there that's based in the Star Wars galaxy that you can go to, and it's completely immersive and all that. Like, it's a neat idea. Yeah, it's a neat idea, and that's another thing. Like, we wouldn't have any of the Star Wars VR experiences, or the Secrets of the Empire, the one that we did in hyper reality.
That was so cool. Honestly, that was one of the coolest experiences I've ever done.
Yeah. So we probably wouldn't have that either, right?
It was honestly, the only way you can really explain it is just like, it was like you're in Ready Player One, but it was all Star Wars themed. It was so cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a question that I think we're going to be asking ourselves for a little while. And I think going into next year, I mean, this year celebrates 50 years of Lucasfilm. Next year, we'll celebrate 10 years of Disney Lucasfilm. So
every year it's going to be a celebration of something. It's like, did we just celebrate the anniversary of Empire Strikes Back or something?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, that was last year.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
because there's like 50 years Skywalker Sound, 50 years Lucasfilm, 50 years Industrial Light and Magic, 50 years Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean? Like, every year is going to be something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's so true. But
just cashing in on the collectibles.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, because now it's not even just like an internal company thing that they're celebrating anymore. Like the celebration of this company has gone, global, to celebrate with Star Wars fans around the world as well. So, I mean, I noticed one of the latest pieces of clothing that they've got on the Her Universe website is a jacket with the 50 years Lucasfilm logo on it. And I'm like, wow, like, what? Like, that's
like a company code
being sold. Yeah. And then now you can also buy, I remember when we were down at Disneyland in California, and I remember seeing Lucasfilm hats like in the Star Wars Galactic docking bay shop or whatever, and I was like, what? Like, you can buy a Lucasfilm hat? Like, I don't know. It just seems a little. It's odd, you know. It's just like I just didn't realize that was that exclusivity of.
Well, you can buy Marvel hats. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I get. Yeah, I guess you can buy Marvel hats. Yeah, that's true.
I bet Disney's trying to sell all this stuff now as like a brand, right? You can
Yeah,
buy the brand.
exactly. I think like that's that you know what, that's what it is it's Disney using the Lucasfilm brand to cash in on, whereas before you couldn't buy any Lucasfilm merch. Like
No,
it
it
was
was
all
just
Star
staff.
Wars merch.
Mhm.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just staff that got Lucasfilm merch, but no, like fans had to buy the Star Wars stuff. So, but now fans can buy all the stuff. They can buy the Lucasfilm stuff. They can buy the Star Wars stuff. It's just endless. So, yeah, that's it's a different world, obviously, on the other side of the Disney line. But uh, it's crazy to think, how far we've come and how far Disney's come with this franchise. It's taken them a while to work it out. Obviously, there's no turning back the
You know
clock.
what?
But
I think what we should do to try to get exclusive gear is we should make Skywalker Ranch stuff.
you can, yeah, that's another thing. They sell Skywalker Ranch wine in the Disney parks. Like I remember,
Really?
yeah, we were there for 2017 celebration, and I remember walking into the shop that we got our Yavin medals,
Mhm.
and on the wall was a large case of. I think it was $50 US or 45 or something for a bottle of Skywalker Ranch wine, and
Did you
it's
get
not.
one?
No, I had no room in the luggage, but I would have got one if I did, because literally we were bursting out the zipper kind of thing, and that was after me bringing that empty suitcase just for stuff, and
That's right.
So a bottle of wine wouldn't have worked, but yeah, next
Yeah, I
time
had to drink it on the plane.
Yeah, no, it's the kind of thing that I think to myself, like, because I do enjoy wine. I'm not the biggest wine connoisseur, but
Mhm.
I'll have a glass of white or red or whatever, like whenever the opportunity presents itself, and if I've had people over the house, like I'll buy a bottle or whatever. But
That raises
that
the
would be a bottle
question.
I would not open.
You collect it.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
it's a red, so it'll at least last. If it was
yeah,
a white, you'd have to
exactly.
drink it.
Right. Yeah.
I wonder though, is this wine then? Does George own it, or does
Yeah.
Disney own it?
No, the ranch, I believe, still belongs to George, but there's parts on the ranch that he has his company still, like Skywalker Sound operates off of well, at least a section of, there's like a whole editing suite and everything, like that's all still part of Skywalker Sound, but it's still on his property.
Okay.
So yeah, and I mean, like the Skywalker Ranch is so big that they have their own fire department, right?
Right.
So yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things I've seen actually is on Netflix. Jon Favreau has his chef show, and there's an episode or two where they actually go to the Skywalker Ranch, and he cooks up some meals in the kitchen there with somebody. And it was really, really neat because they do some walking around the grounds, and they talk to the gardeners there, and they're just gardeners who work for George's farm, that they just, like, I don't even know if they ever see the guy. Like they just work the crops, and
Yeah.
that's that, right? But it's interesting because I mean, the guy, it just reminds you, like, yes, he's a billionaire who invented this crazy franchise that we know and love, but he's just a guy. Like he's just a normal dude that just, he grew up on a farm, much like Luke Skywalker, and lived a simple life until he came up with this crazy story that the world fell in love with. And in his core, like, he's still that same guy. Like he doesn't like doing interviews. He doesn't like signing people's action figures. Like he's just very to himself, and doesn't like the press, and doesn't like to be disturbed or bothered, and lives the quiet life kind of thing. And
That's fair, because honestly, if he was more like Gene Simmons, for example,
Yeah.
he could just spend 15, 20 minutes a day just signing random stuff and just selling it for like $500 a pop.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, I remember watching a video of it was some guy who was being a bit of a pest, but he was following George, and he's like, hey, George, yeah, can you sign this for me? Can you sign this? It was like, I don't even know what it was, and he's like, no, no, I'm not going to sign that for you because you're not a fan. and he's like, yeah, no, George, I'm a fan. He's like, no, you're not a fan. You're just going to come here and sign this, and then you're going to sell it on eBay for like $500. No, go get your own job, invent your own stories, and make a movie, and then you can make a bunch of money like yourself.
I remember this video. The guy like followed George in the car, and George was just talking to him at the lights and stuff.
Yeah, he was talking to him at the intersection. Like every time it went red, he would catch up on. He would like run and chase after the car.
Yeah. And George just keep rolling down the window and like scolding him.
Like he doesn't even ignore the guy. He literally rolls down the window just to tell him off, and.
It's extra funny because it's George.
Yeah, it is so funny. I mean, like, I love that guy. Like, he's just like I would not have the time or patience in my day if someone was annoying me like that to roll down the window and let them know I'm being disturbed like this. Like, I would just ignore them, right? Like, just don't look. I mean, a lot of us probably do it. It's a terrible thing to say, but like, whenever you get the panhandling going on in the streets, like a lot of us just kind of stare at the license plate in front of your car.
Yeah, just pretend you didn't hear them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like being George, like you're not even driving yourself. Like you're sitting in the back seat, you can just keep that window up and just look the other way, right? And
I'm sure there are tinted windows too.
Yeah, but nope, he's gotta roll that thing all the way down just to let you know you gotta make your own movie so you can sell your own signatures.
Yeah.
So great.
George had it all planned out.
Oh man, yeah. All right, so coming up in the next couple weeks, I mean, we've got a lot of stuff to cover. Obviously, I mean, today we spent a lot of time on the episode chatting about this upcoming 10-year anniversary of Disney Lucasfilm. I mean, we covered the Boba Fett or the Book of Boba Fett trailer, but something we didn't or forgot to mention, it's been mentioned on other episodes of the podcast though, is that Disney Plus Day, which is coming up on November 12th, Disney Plus is going to be dropping it's kind of like its own kind of Disney Gallery style video. It's going to be called Under the Helmet, The Legacy of Boba Fett. And this is likely going to include footage of the old films behind the scenes with the character, all the various different Boba Fetts in costume, possibly even the reshoots from the special editions. And of course, Tamora Morrison will likely have some interviews with him about the character. And I mean, this is a guy that's inherited the character from Jeremy Bulloch, and I mean, playing Django years later on the prequels, and then now once again playing Boba Fett in the flesh after doing the voiceover re-recordings for the original re-release movies on Blu-ray. So there's a lot of people that have played Boba Fett, and I would love to see Daniel Logan in this if he's been brought in to make an appearance. But we're going to be talking about that with a very special guest from the Boba Fett fan club, and I hope this works out. We've booked something in for a couple weeks from now after this thing drops, and I'm really looking forward to this. So if that works out, thank you again to the Boba Fett fan club for lending out Jess to spend some time with us on the show to talk about the legacy of this character. So lots of stuff to look forward to. We also, of course, we didn't really talk too much about Halloween, but we're going to make another episode this week to kind of honor Halloween this year and Star Wars Halloween, the rise of Kylo Ren. We're going to be getting into what happened with that character and acknowledging the events that happened in the Lego Star Wars special that pull canon events from the Rise of Kylo Ren comic. So we're going to be getting into all that stuff in an upcoming episode as well on the podcast, and you guys can look forward to all of that stuff. Let's hit the outro. Thanks again, Blake, for joining us on the show, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Got a blast.
All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning into the show. And if you can do us a favor of dropping a 5-star and a review, a very small review, 5 or 10 words at most, on the Apple Podcast platform, it really goes a long way. If we had even 20 people do this for us, that would be an absolute miracle, because there's like next to no reviews on that, and nowhere near the listenership that we're getting. So I guess it's because everyone uses a different platform these days, Castbox, Spotify, Google, whatever. But the real juicy one to get us boosted in the searchable ranks of all the Star Wars podcast options that are out there is to leave a review on the Apple platform. So if you have an iPhone and have the Apple Podcast app installed, that would do us a huge favor if you can look us up on there and just drop a review via that platform, because it helps the algorithms and all this and that. So that's the best way to help us out. There's also 2 links in the description below. A World Vision link. You can leave any donations with us to them and help someone who actually needs the money. For the heck of it, we do have a tip jar on Patreon, literally for the heck of it. But the biggest thing you can do to help us out is honestly by leaving a review, spreading the word, and sharing the show with a friend, because we love to make free Star Wars content on the internet, and it's all for you guys. So that would do us a huge favor. We got a Halloween episode coming up on the show. I know it's kind of post-Halloween, but you know, it's still that time of year, and we're going to be covering the Lego Terrifying Tales, as well as the Rise of Kylo Ren comic book and what happened with Ben Solo. Looking forward to that, as well as all this stuff with Boba Fett. May the Force be with you guys, and we'll see you next time right here on Star Wars Escape Pod.